What issues will both Houston officials and residents face this new year? Good evening, I'm Edel Howland with Houston Public Media. Linda Laurel is off tonight but will return next week. Welcome to Red, White and Blue. Taxes, pinches payments, budgets, transportation, infrastructure and term limits. These are just a few of the issues facing both our elected officials as well as many Houstonians this year. So this evening we ask, what are the short and long-term challenges facing our great city? Does the city's spending meet the demands of Houston's ever-increasing population, or does it outpace the city's needs? What impact will the city budget cap have in 2015? And what is the potential impact for the city if council members are successful in seeking a reform to agenda voting and mayoral term limits? To help guide us through this evening's discussion, we are pleased to welcome Harris County Treasurer Orlando Sanchez, Council Member Oliver Pennington, District G, Council Member at Large, Position 5, Jack Christie, and Council Member Ellen Cohen, District C. And leading our discussion are hosts David Jones and Gary Pollan.
Well, David, we have a distinguished panel today, and I think they know a whole lot about city issues.
But only one right here is Orlando Sanchez knows something about the county finances and about the city of Houston's finances. He wanted to be involved in city government. He was for a while. He was for a while. He wanted a bigger job once. So, Orlando,
Almost.
I see that there was once a projected budget deficit for the city of Houston in the amount of $144 million. It's now been pared down to 63. They have until, May or so to fix it. But the projection for 2017 is another $112 million. So how do you county guys surely can recommend how to get hold of the city's finances?
Absolutely. Get raise taxes and preferably decrease expenditures. The former is probably not going to happen, so you're going to have to drastically decrease expenditures. But Houston faces tremendous pressures. We've all talked about it: infrastructure, public safety, growth, and in that projection of $63 million, they also have backed out the pension situation, and they haven't taken into account the precipitous slide of the cost of a barrel of oil, which already Conoco has announced a 20% reduction in exploration and production for next year.
So do any of the other three who are on council have any disputes about the $63 million and how you're going to get it reduced to zero?
Well, it has to
Other
be
than laying off people.
Well, it has to be reduced to zero. I mean, we can't pass the budget unless it's zero. So, and I think there are. I think Orlando said it well. I mean, we have to decide, are there techniques that we can use? You know, we're talking about a garbage fee. We're the only city of any size in this country that doesn't have a garbage fee. That's something to look at. You know, there are other areas, and yes, we have to look at services that may have to be cut.
Well, let's let Christie and Pennington decide which taxes they would like to raise in order to get
How
that
about ask
revenue.
them what unnecessary expenditure they'd like to get rid of? That's another
They can
option.
have both of those.
I like that question better. I think you can control spending, and we do have a revenue cap that's really not all that bad. But if you control spending, raising property values, really the only thing that you really have to do long term is probably solve our pension challenge. If we don't solve that, financial situation doesn't look good long term.
And Mr. Pennington, how about the mayor's proposal to get rid of the cap on revenues?
caps.
Well, I'm not for that until we resolve the pension issue. I don't think that the people would go for it. There's a possibility that there might be a special tax for police and for fire, like passed earlier for a limited period of time to get us out of a crisis. But I don't think we're in a crisis right now. We're in a structural crisis in that the pensions are going up, and that a small portion of the population, I think that they're about 10,000 people in the police department and about 6,000 or 7,000 people in the fire department who are involved in the pensions, and they're driving the Houston's financing. And I think that we need to resolve that and have local control, have control by the city council of the finances of the city, including the pensions.
You mentioned, Oliver, local control. What is the problem with why the city of Houston doesn't have control over its pensions now?
Well, none of us were here when it happened, but I think in 2001, the city struck a deal when Mayor Brown was the mayor with the pensions. And there was an actuarial study done, and the actuarial study showed that the city would have an overburden for pensions of about 15.5%. As it turns out, it's about 35% right now, and there is a lawsuit pending between the city and the actuarial company saying that they did misfeasance in calculating that. It's very difficult to prove because I know there are a number of assumptions, but anyway, I think the city thought they were agreeing to one thing and they got another.
So, Ellen, the firefighters are really unhappy. And yet, wouldn't you say, Ellen, that Gary Pollan, Jack Christie, Mr. Pennington, and Mr. Sanchez, together with Dan Patrick and the tax assessor collector, Paul Betancourt, can solve this problem in the legislature this year? This coming session.
I say that they could say
would you say these people should be able to get this done?
I would say if those good minds sat together, probably something could move, but I want to be very careful to understand something, and that is that we have to be very pragmatic. We can talk about trying to do something with regards to the pension, because we all know the pension is a huge problem. The fact of the matter is we have to figure out what we're going to do if we don't deal with the pension issue, and that $63 million is what we should be talking about right now. What do we do about the $63 million?
But I want to take it back because David makes some assumptions. I'm not sure all of our viewers know what he's talking about. Does the City of Council, in fact, control 100% what happens with the pensions for anyone working for the city?
No.
Okay. Who do you have to deal with?
As Oliver suggested and Gary alluded to, where the firefighters are concerned, we have to deal with the legislature.
Okay. Now, does the legislature fund any of the firefighters' pension to the City of Houston? They write a check to you for that?
No.
So,
Okay, who's
how did that happen?
Gary, who's
Yes,
sponsoring, who's sponsoring the
Orlando
bill?
was actually on city. No.
Who's sponsoring the bill? Who's sponsoring the bill to give us relief?
Well, I'm not on the city's legislative committee, but Oliver can probably address it.
I don't think there's not a bill right now, even though there's pre-filing of bills. There's not a bill right now because they have been negotiating. The city's, the mayor's staff has been negotiating with the policemen, and we have some fruits from that. The policemen have reduced their actuarial needs by $50 million a year for this year and for the next year. So that's a significant change. And they are negotiating. You know, we don't have a contract with the firemen's union right now, and of course we have to also negotiate with the pension. They're separate boards, separate authorities, but they are negotiating. And I heard from the firemen that they had made a proposal a few weeks ago, but I haven't seen that really meet the light of day yet. But I presume they're talking about a reduction in, $10 to $20 million range.
Yeah, but in order to get out from under the present structure that hampers the city and its ability to negotiate with its employees, you have to get the legislature basically to butt out.
As I said, there's no reason for 10,000 people to dictate whether we have financial stability in our city.
Most of those legislators.
I do. I hope they.
Why don't you talk to some of them?
Well, I will say, and I'm sure you all agree with me. If the legislature wants to manage the city of Houston's pensions, then they ought to pay for them. That sounds only fair to me.
It's absurd, Gary and David. The idea that people from Midland, Odessa, and El Paso, and Kinney County, Brackettville, Texas, are deciding what happens in the city of Houston is absurd, in my opinion.
All right, Jack Christie, let's talk about something else that is close to my heart: infrastructure, which I know David thinks is boring, but people drive on the streets of the city of Houston every day. And I think it's fair to say under the present administration, the infrastructure is deteriorated. And you can place blame on a number of issues. One could say they just haven't done a great job, or you could say the city's grown and our growth has outstripped the ability of the city to keep up. But the question I have is, what do we do?
Well, I think you have to prioritize it, just like I think pensions is probably our biggest priority right now financially. But if you say that roads and potholes and breaks in the curbs are more important or second important, you just prioritize it. You make a Manhattan-type project on, we're going to do it one way or another. Whether you put more people on the streets, I've gone with the work crews and filled potholes. But when you take it seriously, you'll do it 24 hours a day if that is your second priority. And I think it can be done. And you just have to prioritize. There may be less money for this, for that. But if that's the priority of the citizens of Houston, we need to put it into roads.
Did the infrastructure fee that the voters voted in a couple of years ago, is that working or not?
Yeah.
Yeah, it will be. I mean, I'm sorry, Jack, you want to finish your thought?
We're in agreement on that.
Okay. I mean, I think the idea is that by 2018, 2020, that's when we're going to be pay-as-you-go to the extent that we'll have enough money to really do the kinds of things. I think My dream is that people are complaining now about the condition of our roads, and yes, we have 10,000 people moving in a month, so we have a lot of construction, we have a lot of things happening, but they're complaining about that. I really believe that in 2020 people are going to be complaining about the fact that every time they turn a corner, another road is being reconstructed. So I think it's going to work.
But can I say one thing, Oliver? I'm sorry. Anise Parker and I were on the city council when we had the same issues. The quality of the roads, the condition of the roads. We worked with the Public Works and Engineering and passed what's called the street cut ordinance. And I submit to you that even to this day, it is not enforced. If you read the street cut ordinance, it requires contractors to put up a sign, X number of letters, who's the owner, post their permit, and reconstruct the street panel to panel. It doesn't get done.
So, Oliver, you were once what is called a mud district lawyer, as I recall, and so you are in some ways responsible for this enormous growth outside of the city limits, which is now contributing to the dysfunction that we have in transportation, are you not? And how are you going to make up for all that wrongdoing?
Well, first of all, I did learn some things how to build communities by doing that, but I'd like to say something about the infrastructure. I've gone back and calculated what the CIP, Capital Improvement Program, costs are for street and drainage for about the last 12 years or 14 years, and it's averaged pretty much the same. Of course, it was funded primarily through bond, and on an inflation-based basis at 4% inflation per year. And the expenditures have been about $225 to $250 million a year, starting back in the early 2000s. And so the good news is that we're continuing to make that expenditure, and we're not issuing additional bonds. You know, we're $1.7 billion in debt, which is about 2/3 of the debt service tax. That takes about 2/3 of the debt service tax that we levy to amortize that. So we are making some progress, and I think it's a good conservative program, and I don't think it's going to yield results as quickly as Councilmember Cohen has, because I've looked at the numbers. But it is because we still have substantial debt out and are going to have to make substantial payments. It's easy. It's growing a little bit, but not at a very important rate. The important thing is that we have a director of public works who's not a program kind of guy like a Corps of Engineers guy was, like Dan Kruger was, but they have somebody who knows how to make tactical decisions to make the expenditures effective.
But remember also, we got into the position we're in, and we had to implement this drainage fee, which is part of Rebuild Houston, because we ended up using the money from the Water Sewer Enterprise Fund for many years, which was a pay-as-you-go. The money generated from water and sewer rates were to be kept in the Enterprise Fund and used only for that infrastructure. When the city got into financial trouble, we dipped into that. There's no money there, so now we had to create a new stream of revenue. And Ellen is correct, says by the year 2018, 2020, if that money is there, the thing that future council members and mayors have to do is resist tapping that Rebuild Houston Fund to put in the general fund and use for debt service, which is exactly what we've done.
All right, now one of the things that was a big deal in City Council over the last year was the so-called HERO ordinance, and I want to bring that up. First of all, I want to publicly thank Mayor Parker for helping elect Republicans, because the stunt with the subpoenas just before the election was a huge assist and got the base Republican vote really agitated and turned them out. So that's just, I don't know if that was her intention, but thank you for that. At any rate, we know the City Council passed it. There's an ongoing dispute on whether or not the people should vote on it. So I want to get everyone's take. Should the people vote? Should they just make the decision? And there are other issues we get into, and I know that we're going to hear. In fact, Ellen, should the people get to vote?
No, at this point, I think where it's now is it's in the courts.
Right.
Okay? I mean, should people vote on lots of things? Of course they should. But the point is, this is in the courts. So we have to wait and see what happens. And I think it's either January 15th or 18th that supposedly we're supposed to hear something. And by the way, the so-called HERO Act is not so-called. It is actually the Houston Equal Rights Ordinance, so it is the HERO Act.
Okay.
And in my opinion, depending upon what the courts do, either side's going to appeal. Absolutely.
Right.
Let's just say, for the sake of argument, that it does end up going on a 2015 ballot. My big concern, aside from the fact that I believe all people should be treated equally, is that if the community voted against the Equal Rights Ordinance, we're going to see what happened in Phoenix happen here. I would dare say we could be threatened with the Super Bowl pulling out. I would dare say that we could be threatened with any number of conventions and conferences. This, if the headline in the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal said, Houston votes against equal rights, as opposed to the headline that says Houston's terrific, more people are moving there, it's a great place to live, it's a wonderful, which is the way it is right now, we're going to see serious, serious problems in our bottom line.
I remember Jack or Oliver, correct me if I'm wrong, voted against this. Which bathroom were you afraid of that where you might?
All right.
Is that was?
I tell you,
That's
David,
not the question. Why did you vote against it? Why did you think, and why do you believe that people should be able to vote?
very first week, before we even took a vote, I think if they'd have done it my way, we wouldn't have this controversy. Basically, I asked the city attorney, large cities, how many cases really go to court for discrimination? He said 10 to 12. That time, the Houston Chronicle quoted me, says, if you're a person of color and have trouble getting in a restaurant or a bar or a bathroom, call me, I'll get you in. I think if someone else would have said, if you're transgender, transsexual, have problems doing, somebody should have stepped up for those 2 or 3 cases. Do we need a 37-page ordinance for 10 or 12 cases? We could solve those because this city, 99.9%, we don't discriminate. We get along. So why have more legislation to overregulate discrimination?
So you call it a solution in search of a problem.
10 or
There you
12
go.
people,
Very good.
10 or 12 people, because those are the 10 or 12 that stepped forward and said, I couldn't get into this restaurant. I was refused because of my age. I couldn't get in because of my color. What about all the people that didn't step forward because there's no place to go unless you hire a lawyer and take it to through the federal system? If we pass HERO, we solve the problem right here.
Here's another quality of life issue for you, Mr. Pennington. Quality of life issue. We were just rated out of 2,000 some odd communities as the 8th most stressed city in the United States.
With best stress.
Stress. An extremely high unemployment rate when you combine those that are looking for work and working part-time. 72% commute at least 31 minutes. 38% are uninsured. 40% live below the poverty line, and the median household income dedicated to rent is at 40%. We have people who are barely getting by. That's stress. That's stress. What do we do about those stressed people?
But you don't have to agree that that's
Don't
even
take
stress.
care of me.
Well, I agree there's a lot of stress. I know in my district, the Greater Houston Partnership analysis of the 2010 census shows that we have 220,000 jobs, and that 92% of the people live outside the district, and so they're commuting in, which also means that the 150,000 or so who live there are commuting out, and then you have people driving through. So we have a terrific traffic problem, because one of the reasons for it, of course, is we have a lot of jobs in District G, but also because there is not workforce housing in District G. As apartments built in the 70s are being torn down and luxury apartments are built, those people that were living in those apartments are having to move to Katy or whatever, which adds to the problem and to the stress of driving. And what I would like to see, I think we have an opportunity to provide more workforce housing, particularly on the east side, now that we're going to have the rail going in Harrisburg, the rail going in North Main, and the rail going over to U of H. And we've had management districts over there who have been building sidewalks that connect to Harrisburg and those other areas, that we can encourage housing to go over there, and it's going to be acceptable to do that. So we need to do it. And I think that we also need to work on our education. That is the best way to upgrade the jobs that people have, is through education, both through 2 years of education for technological jobs, and there are a lot of those, particularly in the oil and gas industry, I think, and other industries. So we need to improve our education to improve our employment, and then we need to work on having better places for our workforce people
Orlando,
to
I got a
live.
question for you. One of the issues the newly elected lieutenant governor has pushed in his campaign is property tax reform. And property tax reform, as we know, there's been skyrocketing appraisals, and people's taxes are going up even though they're not voted for by anyone. However, on the other side, for government entities like Harris County, predominantly, the city of Houston also, property tax revenue is very important in terms of the revenue that the government needs to operate.
Our only source of revenue at the county.
All right, so where's that going and where should it go?
Well, but the toll road is the toll road. It's a separate authority. It's a separate governmental
So what do we
agency.
do?
Look, I'm all for capping the rate at which property taxes go up. The problem in the state of Texas is we're pretty much exclusively relying on property taxes. The legislature says, you know, property taxes, they don't give us any relief. They put the burden on the local governments. And so when you look at your rate of growth of property taxes as compared to the rate of growth in the economy, they're inconsistent. In other words, our rate of growth for our taxes is outstripping the rate of growth of the economy, inflation, everything else. And so there has to be some relief. There's got to be a breaking point. And the state is going to have to look at, just as the federal government is doing, figure out additional sources of revenue that put the burden more equally among the citizens of the state and less reliant just on property owners.
Which one of you are going to call for the resignation of the chief of police who just announced that the war on drugs is a miserable failure? He advocated grand jury reform, which obviously means that he understands that of the 228 shootings by police, that none of them were charged, that there's a problem in terms of controlling what many people in the minority community would say is a rogue police department.
No, he didn't say that.
What? Yes, he said he
called
wants
it a rogue
grand jury
police
reform.
department.
No, I did. I'm characterizing his impressions.
Okay.
I disagree with you. I looked at the statistics of how many interactions of the citizens with the Houston Police Department, and there's like 1.5, 1.6 million. There was about 1,500 complaints, no, 1,500 compliments for the interactions, 215 complaints. That's 1/10 of 1/10 of 1%. And I'm saying that the chief of police is doing a good job. It is a rainbow coalition of races, and 99.9% of the time they're doing a good job.
Ellen Jackson's forgetting the 40,000 burglaries that they couldn't even find. He's forgetting the homicide department that collapsed and let 24 people of color left on the battlefield unattended.
Well, apparently you're reminding him.
Right. I'm reminding you.
Well,
What's your rebuttal? What's your rebuttal to Jack
I have a
Christie?
better question.
She doesn't want or you don't want to rebut Jack
No, I'll
Christie?
give her a better question.
I'm not allowing the two of you to argue. Go
Okay,
ahead.
I have a better question, Ellen. Because we talked, Oliver Pennington talked about, implied that maybe we should be looking at a public safety fee for the city because, you know, it's fair to say we don't have the number of police we need given the growth and strength of the city. Probably don't have the number of fire department officials. So how do you pay for it? And I guess that option would be like we did with infrastructure, go to the people and say, would you like a dedicated fee to go to support public safety? What do you think?
And I think that that's a reasonable way to approach it. I really do. I mean, if
Sounds
we're
like
looking.
a user fee for cops.
Well,
If
I
you
mean,
call them, you pay.
Well, can I make a suggestion? Not that
No, it wouldn't have that in mind. But you know, I think that the opportunity. You know, how do we? You started off this conversation today, saying how are we going to deal with the $63 million deficit? How are we going to deal with it? So not only do we have a $63 million deficit, then how do we deal with the fact that we do need more police, that we do need more fire, and if there are other places around this country, I don't think we should feel that we have the answer. If there are other places around this country that have good ideas, let's look at them. If there's things that the city, I think, in my district, when I ask people, what are you willing to do in order to see that we're not looking at a deficit, they're open to a lot of these suggestions.
Interesting.
At least a discussion.
You know, let me make a suggestion to my colleagues here. The City of Houston created 27 what's called tax increment reinvestment zones. When the legislation came out, the TERZs, as we call them, it was an instrument to help eliminate blight in urban areas. They started somewhere in the Midwest. We have 27 of them. The total loss of general fund revenue from all taxing agencies, Harris County, City of Houston, and schools this year is approaching about $170 million.
Well, there's a deficit.
But wait, there is $57 million coming out of the general fund of the City of Houston to the TERS boards. Now, you need to think another question. The issue is, perhaps you ought to go to the board of directors of those TERSs and ask them if they'll contribute to some police officers, because the police chief came out the other day and said 87% of the theft crimes in the City of Houston are unresolved. So get those TERS boards to commit to hiring 10 police officers with their $57 million and help make a contribution to the crime
So
budget.
quick yes or no, quick.
I don't think I don't think that's the TERS board's responsibility, and I think that
but
you
they're
know,
taking the money out of the
no,
general
but,
fund.
I know, but the management districts, like the Galleria has a management district.
Those are
Upper
different.
That's an additional tax, and they pay for security
That's
out of that.
different than a
I'm saying
TERS.
that TERS doesn't pay for security.
All right, so we vote.
Quickly yes or
TERS,
no.
the
Quick
TERS
yes or no.
money comes out
capital.
of the general
It's for
fund.
capital.
Alan Cohen, quick yes or no. If the mayor of Houston was a progressive mayor, would she not have a $13 an hour minimum wage on all contractors who are doing work for the city of Houston?
I think that's the kind of question you have to ask her.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ellen Cohen, Jack Christie, Oliver Pennington, Orlando Sanchez, and Edel. We can make you an honorary member of the Houston City Council.
Thank you so much. It's a good night for me. And remember, you can catch Red, White and Blue every Friday at 7:30 p.m. right here on TV8 and again Saturdays at 6:30 p.m. We also invite you to visit us online and send us your comments. We want to hear what you are saying about the issues that affect Houston. You can submit your comments at houstonpublicmedia.org or on Facebook, and don't forget to like us. Thanks so much for watching. See you again next week. Good night.